I finally made it. My longest project yet. Ever since I started this channel, I've always wanted to make an SNL video because, who doesn't want to talk about a sketch comedy show that's twice my age? I'm kidding. But in middle school, I fell in love with SNL, specifically watching the 2010s, which is regarded as the worst era of SNL. The decade starts off with people like Andy Samberg, Fred Armisen, Jason Sudeikis, Kristen Wiig, and Bill Hader. They had talented writers such as Seth Meyers and John Mulaney showcase the strengths of the cast. The early 2010s was fun at the beginning, but as cast members began to leave, they left big shoes to fill. In this video, we're going to focus on 2 consecutive seasons of SNL that are regarded as some of the weakest seasons of all time, and is apparent in the drop-off of quality in the show. Hopefully we gain some insight in how SNL is viewed today with their audience and where it could be in the 2020s. Before we get into season 40, airing from 2014 to 2015, let's establish where the season is to start. Season 40 was in the middle of a rebuild, which started in season 39, with Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, and Jason Sudeikis departing the show, and Seth Meyers leaving in the middle of the season. 6 members were added to the cast in season 39: Beck Bennett, Mike O'Brien, Kyle Mooney, John Mulheiser, Noel Wells, and Brooks Wieland. Out of the 6 names I've mentioned, you probably only really recognize Beck and Kyle, since the others didn't really last long. During season 39, there were discussions about the lack of representation for Black women, with the show coming under fire for no Black women in their cast since Maya Randolph. In an Athletic article, it details the history of Black women on the show up until 2013. A line that stuck out to me was, "Perhaps it's not that Black women aren't ready for SNL, it's that SNL isn't ready for a Black woman." Jay Pharoah spoke about this years later.
They were ready to get rid of me. 2013 September.
When
I spoke up
and said there are no Black women.
When I said what I said and it got on the griot and it went viral, I almost freaking lost my job.
Wow. This led to Sasheer Zamata being hired mid-season and Leslie Jones and Lakendra Tukes being added as writers. Sasheer lasted 3 years on the show, Leslie, after being promoted to a cast member, 5 years, and Lakendra only lasted till the end of season 39. With Jay's response, it's interesting to contrast with how Keenan talked about the lack of representation, saying, "They just never find ones that are ready." This will be an important conversation we will look into later in regards to diversity among hosts, because if racial groups are being underrepresented in the staff, then it reflects on the diversity in the show's host. Season 39 wasn't the best looking back, as it had the most cast members at the time with 17, which is a continued trend in current seasons of the cast being too big that not everyone gets their chance, which led to 3 out of the 6 new hires not coming back and Mike O'Brien going back to the writing room. Season 39 was memorable because there was hosts that I was familiar with Josh Hutcherson, Miley Cyrus, and Drake. Now that I've established the season before, let's actually get into season 40. Season 40 began with the departure of Nasim Pedrad, a cast member for the last 5 seasons, and the hiring of 3 cast members. First, the youngest cast member of the time and first born in the 90s, 20-year-old Pete Davidson, a new Weekend Update co-host for Colin with Michael Che, and Leslie Jones got promoted from the writing room 4 episodes into the season. The season began with Chris Pratt and ended with Louis C.K. Chris Pratt began his hosting duties on September 27, 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy had come out a month prior, and in 2014, Marvel was becoming a powerhouse in entertainment. Now, Chris Pratt hosting might not have been a huge deal at the time, but it was. Because since then, numerous Marvel actors have hosted to promote their projects, which has included, but not limited to, Chris Hemsworth, Benedict Cumberbatch, Scarlett Johansson, Simu Liu, and the late Chadwick Boseman. They have even made sketches poking fun at the Marvel Universe. Now, they did take advantage of superhero movies before this because Andrew Garfield hosted before The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but now it's become custom to see Marvel actors come on before their movies. If I could pinpoint the difference between season 39 and season 40, I would say many of these hosts favor the target audience, which is just hosts that are familiar to Generation X and Millennials. With it being their 40th season, they had their celebratory 40th special that's nostalgic to watch and a celebration of the show. They bring back memorable characters and sketches to make the night one to remember. As a result of the episode not following the same format, I will not be ranking it with the other episodes this season. In this section, let's get into some statistics from the season. This season, we saw 21 hosts. Breaking it down, 14 men hosted compared to 7 women. Out of those 14 men, there were 3 that weren't white: Chris, Kevin, and Dwayne. Out of those 7 women, only 1 wasn't white: Taraji. There was 7 first-time hosters: Chris Pratt, Martin, Blake, JK, Dakota, Chris Hemsworth, and Taraji. The show usually brings on people that are in the middle of their award season campaign, which we saw with J.K. Simmons for Whiplash, Michael Keaton, Birdman, Reese Witherspoon, Wild, and Amy Adams, Big Eyes. There was one musician that hosted, Blake Shelton, and was the last television performance of the late Prince. There was also 6 comedians this season: Sarah, Bill, Jim, Chris, Kevin, and Lewis. Here are my favorite 3 episodes this season. First, Bill Hader. Now, I do think cast members of the past coming back to host have a certain pizzazz of understanding how to uplift the material. They know how the writing room pitches sketches and how to play to their strengths. Bill Hader's episode brought back fan-favorite characters like Herb and Stefan. Overall, a great episode to watch that showcases Bill Hader's impact on SNL. Next, Martin Freeman. This episode has one of my favorite sketches this season with Wedding Objections. Finally, Dwayne Johnson. Now, Dwayne Johnson is everywhere, as I know him from cult classic The Game Plan, and he brings charisma to every time he hosts, which is why he's a part of the Five Timers Club. I thought every sketch he did was pretty funny, especially the one about wrestling, Bambi being in an action movie, and sucking poison off Pete Davidson. Now, onto the disappointing episodes. This season has some weird sketches in it, and not all of them really land / were my type of humor. The most disappointing episodes were Chris Rock, Kevin Hart's, and Blake Shelton. I don't have a ton to say about Kevin's or Blake's, other than that I didn't really find the episodes funny. However, I do want to spend some time talking about Chris Rock's, Season 40, Episode 5, which is notably regarded as the weakest episode this season. A brief history on Chris Rock. He's a popular comedian that, like other comedians before him, got his start on SNL back in the 90s as a part of the nicknamed Bad Boys with Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider, and David Spade. Eventually, he was fired in 1993 after 3 years. Now, I wasn't watching his stand-up in the 2000s, but I grew up loving his show Everybody Hates Chris, that used to air on Nickelodeon, loosely telling the story of Chris's adolescence. The episode began like earlier sketches in the season did, because in 2014 we were concerned about Ebola, so the show was making their jokes, not knowing that jokes about quarantine and being careful about coughing around others would become a reality less than 6 years later with COVID. Chris Rock's hosting in 2014 was the second time doing so. Chris's monologue focused on talking about the Boston Marathon and 9/11 becoming desensitized with having sales, which seems to hit at the capitalist nature of making anything into profit. Some of the sketches in this episode include Dance Vlog, which was definitely the best sketch Chris Rock did that night, and a Shark Tank sketch about Chris Rock and Beck Bennett wanting to receive funding for ISIS, which wasn't very funny. Up until this point, Chris's episode wasn't that funny, which could be said about other episodes this season as well. Now, enter one of the worst sketches of the season, The Arguing Couple. You can still find the sketch on YouTube at the time of recording, so you can check it out, but one of the most obvious things was the messing up of the lines, the blatant reading of cue cards, and the lack of anything really going on. There was no direction. What are we supposed to be laughing at? Arguing couples? If you go to the YouTube comments, this is one of the few instances where the top comments are how bad the sketch is. With the top one reading, they needed one more rehearsal. And the last sketch of the night, Women in the Workplace, was Chris reading the cue cards, obviously, once again. Now, some hosts can get away with relying on the cue cards more than others, especially from first-time hosts, but coming from Chris Rock, an obvious veteran, it just comes off that he didn't care all that much about some of the sketches. So every season, they introduce new sketches, and some becoming ones we see repeatedly. These allow fans to have favorite sketches and determine the popularity of different characters. This section is dedicated to all the recurring sketches that were introduced this season. All these descriptions are courtesy of Wikipedia, but I do give my personal opinions in a rapid-fire format. Hollywood Game Night, a parody of the TV quiz show of the same name, with host Jane Lynch, played by Kate McKinnon, continually irritated by the cluelessness of the celebrity participants. Fine, I think sketches about game shows have to have more of a creative spin, other than just celebrity impressions and people being dumb. It gets kind of annoying after a while rather than funny. How to Dance with Janelle. Janelle's Sasheer Zamata YouTube dance show is interrupted by her parents, concerned about the sexual nature of the videos and the presence of her obviously aroused friend, Teddy Paskowitz, Kyle Mooney. I liked it. Any sketch with Kyle and Sasheer is a win. High school theater show. A high school theater troupe attempts to open its audience's eyes and tackle big subjects during a very self-aggrandizing play. Probably one of the stronger recurring sketches in the last few years. I like how these theater kids are trying to be self-aware and socially conscious, but do so in a rather insensitive way. Kathy Ann Vanderbilt, a chain-smoking and disheveled woman played by Cecily Strong, who serves as a friend and mentor to various fairy tale characters. She transitioned to Weekend Update appearances at the beginning of season 42. Don't care. Right Side of the Bed, an Atlanta-based morning talk show presented by husband and wife Corey and Gracelyn Chisholm. Awkward moments abound when the camera regularly cuts to guests pressured to be entertaining. This sketch is a spoof of the reality show Chrisley Knows Best. Taryn and Cecily work well here. I do think this sketch isn't that entertaining every time. Heather, a one-dimensional female character from a male-driven comedy. Cecily Strong embodies all the cliches of the female love interest during Weekend Update. Bland. Therese Henderson and his band. Kenan Thompson, Kyle Mooney, and the episode's host play a band who perform gigs at a series of lodges, hotels, and dive bars, with Therese alternating between singing an energetic jazz-funk song and onstage banter that inappropriately delves into the private lives of the host's character, who is reluctant to discuss a vague but serious-sounding issue. One of those, this wouldn't be good if Kenan wasn't in it. Willie, Michael Che's neighbor who is an overly optimistic man who appears on Weekend Update and is played by Kenan Thompson. See Bob, another character tolerable because of Kenan. Frida Santini, Weekend Update character played by Kate McKinnon. She's a middle-aged woman who lives in Colin Joseph's building and writes passive-aggressive notes to her neighbors. Whatever. Riblet, Michael Che's high school friend. He likes to interrupt Che during Weekend Update and make fun of how easy reading cue cards is. Definitely one of the better Weekend Update characters we see this season. Hunk, a parody of the reality television show The Bachelor, in which a single man must find true love with a contestant of his choosing. I think they do a good job of making fun of the Bachelor franchise and switching it up so it isn't as repetitive and predictable like the show. Totino's Lady, a mock television advertisement in which a woman, Vanessa Bayer, makes pizza rolls on her hungry guys. I like it. Some facts about the sketch are it was written by Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, who also wrote Back Home Ballers and The Bajancy. Vanessa Bayer came up with the hungry guys phrasing. Totino sent them pizza rolls after the first sketch, and this was a rare example of a commercial parody getting a sequel, eventually becoming a trilogy. Brother to Brother, a Disney Channel sitcom based around two twin students played by Taron Killam and Chris Hemsworth. When Marky switches places in class with his much more muscular brother Maddie, no one falls for it. Fun nod of Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. I think this is one of the better recurring sketches too, because I think Chris Hemsworth is funny and has solid comedic timing. Also, how Taron is reacting when they insult him is funny. Marky equals Cody, Maddie equals Zach. The House, a parody of The Real World and other reality television shows, starring Beck Bennett, Kyle Mooney, and the episode's host as cast members / house guests. Pinnacle Beck / Kyle sketch. Like, this reeks of their influence. Really funny. Gerard, a former acting coach on The Jeffersons. Gerard, a movie director, is convinced that the drama he's shooting will be more powerful and moving if his actors act like they're in a broad 70s sitcom. Fine. Gemma. Gene D'Ordigio and his wife Lisa bump into a former acquaintance of Gene's, accompanied by his girlfriend, aspiring British singer Gemma. The boyfriend makes the couple uncomfortable by making relentlessly inappropriate comments about Gemma's attractiveness, while Gene is too scared to ask them to leave. Probably my least favorite SNL character that Cecily plays. Janet Johnson, Luna's civil trial. 32-year-old Janet Johnson Luna is prosecuted for having sex with 16-year-old student Gavin Daly. His mother is suing Luna on behalf of Gavin for emotional damage, but Gavin's testimony only proves how non-traumatic the experience was for him. Probably shouldn't have been recurring. Kinky elves. Elves, and in the final two skits, the episode's hosts purposely botch their jobs and gleefully wait for their master to give them the punishment they deserve and desire. Solid. I think it really works, and Kenan and Vanessa do a good job of keeping it interesting for the audience. In season 40, some of the Cut for Time sketches were Ad, Coal Miners, Alan, Pentagon Presentation, Tweet, Morning News, Deaf TED Talks, Santa Traps, Disney Characters, Grandpa, Dance of the Daisies, Christmas Show, Inner White Girl, and Rooftop Party. This season had almost every host have a sketch that was cut for time. Now, the cut for times are definitely hit or miss, like sketches in the show, but I personally enjoyed Alan, Tweet, and Christmas Romance. So usually when we think about cold opens, we think about Alec Baldwin's Donald Trump impersonations and how that was literally the pinnacle of the show for 4 years. However, In season 40, the cold opens weren't solely about Barack Obama. You got to have some sketches about him, like The Rock impersonating Barack, and one addressing Ebola. There was political sketches focused on the broadcasting of different political networks like Fox News and MSNBC. There was the Deflategate sketch talking about the controversy surrounding Tom Brady and deflating footballs. Season 40 had some great cold opens. I specifically loved the Schoolhouse Rock one with Kenan Thompson playing a bill on Capitol Hill with Kyle Mooney. There was something special with referencing how complicated Congress can be with lawmaking, while having it be something that's pretty recognizable for a variety of audiences. Also, the sketch about the Final Four, which consists of Coach K keeping Jahlil Okafor out of the national championship game versus Wisconsin for a big biology test. I don't know. I think this is around the time of the UNC academic scandal with athletes being discovered to take fake classes. Lastly, I love the It's Summer monologue in the season finale. It incorporates the political climate of the United States in an intriguing, comedic way. Like mocking Hillary Clinton trying to relate to 18 to 25-year-olds is funny. So yeah, season 40 was the last season that didn't head in the direction that the cold opens would be for years to come. So my favorite sketches that I haven't mentioned in some way in the video are Neurology music video, Back Home Ballers, Cooking with Paul, and The Dudleys. Anyways, this season is pretty forgettable, especially in the elusive history of SNL. So SNL had to spice up the next season one way or another, and that's when we get into season 41. Now, season 41 was different from the past too, with not having anyone leave the cast. Just some cast members being upgraded to repertory, and John Rudnitsky joining the circus, who unfortunately only lasted a season. The season began with Miley Cyrus, pulling double duty, hosting for the third time, and ends it with Fred Armisen. The last time Miley Cyrus hosted was during her Bangers era, which, as we know, was a big controversy in 2013. Some quick statistics: out of the 21 hosts, 9 were women, 12 men. All of the women were white. Out of the 12 men, 2 were black. And 3 hosts were musicians, pulling double duty: Miley, Ariana, and Drake. Which is funny because all of them got their start on popular children's shows. There was 7 comedians this season, which evens out with Tina and Amy hosting together. There was 9 first-time hosts this season with Amy Schumer, Elizabeth Banks, Ryan Gosling, Adam Driver, Ronda Rousey, Ariana Grande, Peter Dinklage, Russell Crowe, and Brie Larson. A random fun fact is how there's multiple musical guests from this season that eventually get to host the show, with Chance the Rapper hosting twice in 2017 and 2019, Adele in 2020, and Nick Jonas in 2021. In regards to award season, only Brie Larson applies, who won the Academy Award for The Room that year. Elizabeth Banks continued the trend of Hunger Games cast members hosting the show after Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, and Woody Harrelson, which I guess is to say that franchises love going on SNL, as Adam Driver from Star Wars made his first of 3 hosting appearances. Chris Hemsworth hosted again this season, and we did have an athlete host with UFC fighter Ronda Rousey. My favorite episode would easily have to be Ryan Gosling. His monologue about being Canadian was funny and a great start to a strong night. Every sketch was solid. He was in the recurring sketch about Santa and the elves, the popular Close Encounter, and yeah, he did break in Birthday Party, but you could tell he was having a blast. My next 2 favorite episodes would have to be Melissa McCarthy, who's always a delight when hosting, and Tina Fey/Amy Poehler. There's some sketches this season that don't really age well, mostly due to trying to incorporate political references, like the Hillary sketch involving Amy and Kate. Another sketch from Brie Larson's episode is when they're in the future, 2018, and are praising Donald Trump, which is just strange looking back. I will say I was a little disappointed in Ariana Grande's hosting episode because she's so talented and they didn't have her do much on the show. She sang in almost every sketch, which is fine, but I wish we saw more of her natural comedic ability because she was on the best, yes, I said best, Nickelodeon show Victorious. I blame the writers. Overall, I would say the weakest episodes are Donald Trump, Russell Crowe, and Ronda Rousey. So like I said, season 40 was pretty mild. There was no controversy. Nothing really interesting happened except for the 40th celebration. And SNL needed to create some kind of buzz, some kind of attention to make this season unforgettable. On November 7th, 2015, 367 days before the election that elected him president, Donald Trump was due to host the show.
Of course, Latino activists have been calling all week for NBC to drop Trump as a host. Of course, that didn't happen. They were outside of the studios last night again, and they had brought forth a petition earlier in the week with hundreds of thousands of signatures saying that he shouldn't be there.
At this point, he was a presidential candidate with no political experience, the host from Celebrity Apprentice. With him hosting, there was this conflict of interest of having a presidential candidate host, even though he was a television personality. SNL was revolving their show around the impending 2016 election. We had Taran Killam begin the season playing Trump, then ex-cast member Darrell Hammond, and transitioning to Alec Baldwin in season 42. This was different than Hillary and Bernie appearing in a sketch, but having a presidential candidate host in the middle of their election further exemplified how the show really leaned into satirizing the political climate in this country. With the help of social media and the rapidly changing news cycle showcasing various opinions, SNL was beginning to possibly influence the political landscape. Let's break down probably the weakest episode of SNL this season. To begin, he has his monologue. There are some jokes that didn't really land in it, especially this one.
Have a lot of fun tonight.
You're a racist!
Who the hell is, I knew this was gonna happen. Who is that?
Trump's a racist!
Next, there was a sketch about him winning the presidency, like a hypothetical sketch set in 2018 when he's president. Ivanka also guest stars in it, which no one applauds because I don't know, who would have known who Ivanka was. The sketch literally had them breaking the fourth wall, saying that if he won the presidency, all these good things would happen as a result. Which is just such a weird sketch to make looking back. They really did not think this man was going to win. Or maybe they did. I don't know. The next sketch is about Donald live tweeting during a sketch, which is so quirky and funny because this man tweets all the time and his cute little tweets pop on the screen during the sketch. Again, aged weirdly since the jokes during that sketch weren't funny and this man is banned from Twitter, so very creative. Hotline Bling is the only sketch that's online and there isn't much to say except the dancing is kind of scarring. Near the end of the episode, he had a harp sketch, which again wasn't really funny. The final sketch hasn't really aged well and closed the night as my least favorite sketch of the night. So, it's not like he was likable on set when he hosted before, but you know what? Controversy sells, and having a presidential candidate host the show was definitely going to have people talking. What makes this episode age so terribly was how he ended up winning, so the show cannot sit here and say they had nothing to do with it, because they did so in a way that benefited his campaign, by making him recognizable to a larger audience. The cast members have interesting experiences with him hosting. Pete Davidson mentions how he faked a phone call during the table read.
What was the Donald Trump week like?
He was weird all week. He faked a phone call during the table read. Right as we started, he was like, "Oh, hello." He goes, "Oh, fantastic. Okay, great." And then he hung up and he goes, "Hey everybody, my book just went #1."
That did not happen.
Yeah, and I swear by life, and we were all like, "Yo, that phone didn't ring." And also how did he have time to say that? Because you answered and went, "Yup, oh my God." That's he didn't even go, "Hello." "Oh wow, that's awesome, man." Like that. He was just like, "Hello? Oh, that's great. Oh, great. My book went #1, everybody." And we were like, ugh.
Colin Jost reflects in 2020 about how it was pretty terrible comedically.
The book you wrote about having Trump host the show back in 2015, and you write that there have been some hosts over the years who are real Confederate statues of entertainment, and that episode of SNL has not aged well politically or comedically. Your thoughts on that today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I write about it in the book because I wanted people to have a sense of what that was like behind the scenes. I mean, just look at this clip that's playing. I mean, all these clips are so surreal.
Taran Killam said this about him hosting. Admitting that every person who protested Trump's appearance turned out to be absolutely right, the actor explained that the implications of his appearance were not considered and went so far as to say that giving then presidential candidate such a platform helped normalize him. It was rough, Killam said. It was not enjoyable at the time and something that only grows more embarrassing and shameful as time goes on. Lauren's philosophy is if someone's willing to come on and do the show, they're a guest in our house and we should treat them as such. And I fully subscribe to that. But earlier this year, he changed his tune, revealing that Trump struggled at the table read and was powered by bluster. He added the president is a moron. Now, this wasn't the first time Trump hosted, as he did so in 2004. With Maya Randolph said, "I remember when Trump hosted for the first time for The Apprentice, and we, as a cast, were like, this sucks. I don't want to be here for this." Now, in order to properly understand his impact of hosting, let's dig in more to this concept: the history of politicians on SNL. Now, politicians have been around on SNL since its first few seasons, as how can the show do so many cold opens about politicians but not have a single one on? Usually, it was a brief appearance, as in 1976, President Gerald Ford appeared when his press secretary, Ron Nessen, hosted. In 1984, George McGovern, a former senator running for president, hosted after his bid ended. Steve Forbes hosted in 1996 after his presidential campaign had ended. So no presidential candidate had ever hosted while their bid was ongoing. Interesting to note that other presidential candidates that hosted in the 20th century were Ralph Nader, Jesse Jackson, and Rudy Giuliani. Other notable politicians were John McCain hosting in 2002 and Al Gore in 2003. In 2007, Barack Obama appeared in the Clinton Halloween party. The only situation that was a tad similar was when John McCain had a guest appearance on November 1st, 2008, which was days before the 2008 election, which he lost to Barack Obama. According to a Washington Post article from 2015, politicians are the most impersonated people on SNL, with Bill Clinton leading the way, George Bush second, and Barack Obama third, which I can imagine if this was updated, Trump would easily be first. So the point of all this is that there's a difference between impersonation, brief appearances, and hosting. Hosting or running for office can bring a lot of attention and be a game changer in the political atmosphere. For Weekend Update, Season 40 was the first season of Michael Che and Colin Jost, and they've hosted ever since. I don't think they're the best Weekend Update hosts, but they do play well off each other. So the Comfort Time sketches has Ryan Gosling's Cool, Tina and Amy's Christmas at Nana's, and Bieber concerts, Melissa McCarthy's Supermarket Spree, Ariana Grande's New Studio, March Madness, and Cinema Channel, Brie Larson's Oregon Trail, Drake's Work Banter, and Fred Armisen's Coat Check. There are fewer Comfort Time sketches this season. My favorites are Cool, March Madness, Supermarket Spree, and Bieber's concert. Reoccurring sketches introduced this season. Like I said, this will be in quick, rapid-fire format. Young girl interrupting shoots. The shooting of a movie is regularly interrupted by young girl A.D. Bryant, seemingly unaware of the fictional aspect of the scene she has stumbled into. No thanks. Citizen Forum. An array of eccentric people monopolize the podium during the Citizens Forum of Bakersfield, California, to the dismay of two helpless counselors. Very fun. Colleen Rafferty. 3 people are being interrogated about a paranormal encounter or phenomenon they experienced, but Colleen Rafferty's recollection of the event vastly differs from the other 2, and is filled with unsavory details. Another staple recurring sketch from the decade. Kate shines in these. Deanie, someone's mom. Deanie, Kate McKinnon, inaccurately recaps her favorite soap operas on Weekend Update while eating from a plastic container. Whatever. Star Wars Undercover Boss. An Undercover Boss parody where Kylo Ren goes undercover as a low-level employee to interact with his subordinates. Cool. America's Funniest Pets. The presenter of an animal-based video clip show invites the 2 presenters of a French similar show, Joël Leroux and Noël Lesso, Cecily Strong, Kate McKinnon. He asked them to co-host the show and provide silly voiceovers for the clips, but said voiceovers turned out to be more depressing than their American counterparts. Cute. Very quirky. True Tales from the Sea. Adventurers down on their luck are rescued by a group of mostly beautiful mermaids, but that includes Shud, Kate McKinnon, a part woman, part blobfish mermaid who doesn't exactly enchant the men she's trying to seduce. Weird. Shanice Goodwin, Ninja. Despite her big stature and general clumsiness, Shanice Goodwin, Leslie Jones, cashier by day and ninja by night, is inexplicably a master of stealth. Goofy. I like it. Chad. Pete Davidson plays Chad, an apathetic, easily distracted youth with limited conversational skills, whose catchphrase is, okay. He's the heartbreaker of several people decades older than him, but he couldn't care less about their grand declarations of love. Funny the first time, but does eventually get old. Suburban Mothers. A group of suburban mothers engage in cult-like behavior and trying to convert a newer, inexperienced mother into doing something that would prove them of their motherhood. Solid. Is this underrated? Alright, some of my favorite sketches are Meet Your Second Wife, Jonah Hill's Vine sketch, Family Feud Extended Family, Inside SoCal, and The Champ. After season 41, we again saw departures from the cast. Jay Farrell and Taran Killam were fired/left the show. I'm going to say they were fired since they still had a year left on their contract. Anytime a cast member leaves, I'm always interested to hear how they speak of the show. Jay Farrell talks about how he wasn't utilized to show off his potential.
Talented and you're able and they don't use you and it's unfair and it's making us feel bad because they don't use you and you're a talent.
But why do you think they didn't use you?
They just, you know what? I think, and they put people into boxes And, whatever they want you to do, they expect you to do.
Taran Killam has went on to be in Hamilton playing King George III to single parents. Taran Killam was also honest about his time on the show. He said that the show changed after Seth Meyers left the writing room. He was the last person there who I witnessed really collaborated with Lauren, as opposed to just do what Lauren says. He also said SNL felt like less of a happy place to be, and more of a competitive, exhausting environment at the time with the increased pre-taped sketches. Now, a discussion I brought up earlier is, how does the show's host reflect on the writing? Pointing out the show's diversity in hosts could explain some changes that the show needs to make to draw wider audiences. Having a lot of featured/repertory players can make SNL a competitive environment, which can increase when you're barely getting screen time. There seems to be a direct correlation with diversity among hosts with featured cast members. We can see this correlation happen with the history of Asian representation on SNL. A New York Times article details how the show used production designer Akira Yoshimura for sketches at times. SNL would have their first host of Asian descent in 2000, with Jackie Chan in May and Lucy Liu in December. A host of Asian descent wouldn't host until 2017, with Aziz Ansari and Camille Najani, and with Asian women until Awkwafina the following year. Asian representation has been rather limited in the featured cast as well. When Bowen Yang joined the cast in 2019, there was a lot of excitement for more diversity on the show. Bowen has definitely become one of the bright spots in the recent seasons. I always wonder who SNL is aimed for. Because yes, I really had fun with the show as a 13 to 15-year-old, but as I've gotten older, I find less enjoyment in the present episodes, especially on a regular basis. I know COVID has changed everything with who wants to host and getting people there, but I would love a few things to happen. First, there needs to be hosts that appeal to a younger generation. The show's longevity is built on having Gen X watch, the Millennials, and now Gen Z, the ability to appeal to different generations. SNL was able to get Millennials because they made sketches they found funny through bringing in writers that understand and are part of that age group. There could probably be another video on how they did this, but I really think that Andy Samberg and the use of digital sketches really helped with this. As a result, I think the show has failed to draw Gen Z. SNL has definitely tried to attract Gen Z with sketches like the terrible Gen Z lingo sketch, and through bringing hosts popular among Gen Z with Timothée Chalamet and Anya Taylor-Joy. Also, speaking of young hosts and how SNL loves bringing on Marvel actors, why hasn't Tom Holland hosted SNL yet? Toby and Andrew did. Where is Tom? By having hosts that have a pre-established fan base, then you're bringing their fans to watch and engage in the show. Next, there needs to be more musicians pulling double duty. I've been pleasantly surprised throughout the years of different musicians having solid comedic timing like Harry Styles. I know pulling double duty is exhausting, but it's refreshing seeing something different. In addition, not every comedian makes good SNL hosts. Some comedians just do not have the versatility to play a variety of characters, and not every comedian is able to have a strong episode. There have been some comedians that have been amazing on SNL, because John Mulaney has hosted 5 seasons in a row, which with his experience writing on SNL and his superb comedic timing, his episodes have become one to watch. The fact that he was the quickest to reach the 5 Timers Club, and his episodes are constantly ranked as one of the best of the season, is impressive. Finally, I wish more athletes hosted SNL. There's been athletes right off championship wins like Michael Jordan and Deion Sanders, and some, like Michael Phelps, off multiple gold medals. As of recently, we've seen retired athletes like Dwayne Johnson and Charles Barkley, with the only active athlete recently being JJ Watt, who hosted in 2020. They need to take advantage of the Winter Olympics happening this year and bring Shaun White to host or something. The weak seasons I've covered here have been forgotten, to an extent, and yes, the current SNL is still not the pinnacle or as important culturally as it was 10 years ago. The show has leaned into having more, entertaining figures, with Kim Kardashian hosting this season and Elon Musk last season, leading into the type of impact that Donald Trump hosting had on the show. The show is aware of their identity to be trendy, and that includes stirring controversy. Henceforth, the question remains, are we tired of seeing it? Are we tired of the same formula? Are we getting tired of SNL? The same jokes coming from Twitter, then they're trending, but then we see them on SNL days later. There's no question SNL will be around for a while longer, so it will be interesting to see where the show goes next.